Pre-rut is one of my favorite times of the year to hunt. You know, I often talk about the secondary rut. That's the most missed time in the woods for whitetail hunting. I love when it's cold. I love when it's snowy. And in November, early December, those fresh scrapes. Have you guys seen those? It's fresh scrape with just leaves and dirt strewn all over the top of the snow. It's pretty cool. I like that time of year. Some of my favorite hunts, muzzleloading at that time or bow hunting, a really good time of the year to hunt. But when it comes to pre-rut, that's accounted for probably half of all my biggest and oldest bucks. And it's a really cool time of the year to hunt. And I think it's misunderstood. It doesn't mean that a high percentage of does are coming into heat. It doesn't mean that bucks are actively rutting and chasing does. It just means that they're ready. And they're really showing signs of being ready. They're showing signs of being ready because they're starting to hit water holes in the morning during the midday. We talked about that in another video. And they're starting to put a lot of rubs and scrapes down. But they're starting to move a lot more during the daylight hours, even if it's just a little bit more in the morning and about the same at night. They're still moving during daylight more often. And so that's that pre-rut period. It's a buildup. Does aren't ready, but especially those older bucks are. When do you hunt? So there's a big period of time around here. It could be the 20th of October all the way through the end of the month, where it's really that traditional pre-rut time. During that time, you'll see the scrapes open up. You'll see them open. You'll see them continually open because bucks are not finding does. When they find does, why do they want to play around with some scrapes? They'll hit them here and there when they're walking by, when they go from one doe to another, but pretty much when they're locked up with does, they're not opening and freshening these scrapes. That's a good time to say, wow, the rut hasn't begun. They're not even scraping. Well, they were scraping a week ago, 10 days ago. That's that time around here, end of October, where you're at, Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia. That might be more like the 5th of November, or starting early November. So you're backing that up another 10 days, 2 weeks. And when you're down the south, that could be any time. So that's a little bit more deceiving. That's more based on individual does and when they're coming into heat 365 days later on an annual basis. So if you know a doe was in heat in this area at this time, and you saw that chasing in this little location, then get right back there about that same time. And people say, you know, it's funny how bucks will be in the same spot at the same time. Well, in a case like that, obviously, if that doe is coming into heat 365 days apart, almost to the day, which they really will come into heat like that, but almost to the day, as long as she was bred that first time and that's when she's in estrus again, then why wouldn't she pull in the best buck in the area? And if the best buck in the area is the one you saw on that same date last year in that same place, I don't think it's coincidental that there's probably a doe in there that's bringing him into that area. He's already smelling her. He's there because she's in heat, not because he's, hey, it's November 8th again, I need to get over into this spot. That's not the way it works, but that doe is bringing him into that location. So bottom line is, once you get into that time frame, think about it. Bucks are ready, does are not. They're not actively seeking it all day, 24/7. They're really not. They're making a bunch of scrapes. They're being a little bit more active. They're really active in the morning hours. But what happens if it's central Indiana and it's 98 degrees on November 1st and it's 40-mile-an-hour winds? There's a giant front coming through. It's starting to thunder and lightning. Folks, they're not going to be moving around. They're not going to be active. So what I look for during that time, when to hunt, when it's cold. Bucks will move a lot more after these cold fronts. So I'm looking at that. You know, I say roller coaster all the time, but roller coaster. I'm looking for that roller coaster of weather. So you get a big front on October 21st around here. It's going to be really cold on 23rd, 24th. I can expect some great rutting behavior that I can capitalize on and some really good movement. If it gets warm 2 days later, it's going to shut it down. If it's cold 5 days later after that, it's going to raise it back up again. And that'll last all the way through the rut, that cycle of behavior. When you get into the rut time, there's a higher value per day. We actually build those values and the time for your area based on zip code into HuntCast with HuntWise. That's something I've helped them with, not only HuntCast, when to hunt, best days, but also RutCast and building those values in. So you'll see those values start to go up during the rut because there's a rut factor built into that. It's pretty cool how we look at those. But bottom line, when it's cold, I hunt. Where do I hunt? Look at it this way. I hunt bedding areas. Bedding, so critical. Bedding areas, that's where I sit. When it's morning time, we'll talk about time of day, I get in between those bedding areas waiting for deer to come back to me. I do not hunt those bedding areas in the afternoon because the bucks are already there. They're laying down during the middle of the day. It's a pre-rut, not the rut. They're not moving 24/7. They're moving a lot more in the morning. They move during the cool of the day. They sit down during the middle of the day for the most part. And then they're moving again at night, hopefully a little bit before dark. But they're not moving much in the afternoon. They are maybe a little bit more, but they're moving a lot more in the morning. So I'm hunting bedding areas. If you go in there in the afternoon, you spook them out. I go well away from around food to get in there in the morning. So I'm hunting those bedding areas. I'm hunting on the downwind edge. I'm hunting between bedding areas. The picture of barbell, and I'm hunting on the downwind side. A lot of times I'm hunting high up. I was just discussing with Dylan a great stand location that we have where it's northwest winds. When the rut heats up, I'll be in that stand. I cannot wait. We have a scraper watching with a cell cam right now. So I can't wait to hunt that time. And I'll hunt that time. I'll hunt those mornings at that time when the rut begins, when the pre-rut begins. We talk about the signs of when the pre-rut begins. That was a video that we already had out just recently. So you really watch for the signs that the rut's beginning and get out there. Now, time of day. This is so important, guys and gals. AM. Morning time of day. So when the morning comes around and you have that cold front the day or two before, it's dropping, you have that first 29-degree morning, 27, 26, 32, 41, it's all relative depending on what area of the country you live in. You have that first morning cold. I'm out there in the morning between bedding areas during the pre-rut waiting for good things to happen. About, like I said, about half of my oldest bucks and biggest bucks have come from during this time because I'm hunting those known age bucks or those known location bucks, target bucks in that location, in those morning stands. A lot of times I don't even look at those morning stands past middle of the summer when I've gone in there and pruned some branches and made them ready. Other than that, I'm not even going in there. I'm waiting for that cold morning sit, going into a fresh stand, and good things happen about half the time in those sits. Really gives you a lot of opportunity. But literally about 50% of the time, I have an opportunity to mature buck on those sits. How long to sit? Again, they're not moving all day. So I'm waiting for things to get past that 11 o'clock hour. I get to 11 o'clock, which might be a 4-hour sit, 4.5 by the time I get there, in there a little bit early. And if I see some movement, if I have some bucks that are still cruising, I might wait till noon then. I'll always push it back an hour, maybe till 1 at the latest. But at some point, those bucks are resting during the day. Again, they're going to have the big push once it gets into the rut lockdown and peak rut where they're moving all day. The post rut, those big ones are still running. They might really start moving for 3 weeks. And so they lose a lot of body fat during that time. And just like before, during the pre-rut, they move, less during the daytime hours because they're resting. Boy, when you get into the post-rut, it's even magnified because now they've lost body weight, they're tired out, and they just sit and do nothing. That's why it really shuts down after that rut. I've had people that it's 14th of November and they say, when's the rut beginning? I'm not seeing any activity. Unfortunately, they missed it. And now it's going to be really bad because they're just sitting there. So they're waiting for rutting activity to start. They went by some guide or something that misled them. The rut happens the same time every year. But you're focused on those morning times. You're not sitting for 4, 5, 6 hours at the most. A lot of times we're shooting our bucks at 9, 10, right around there. Could be 8 o'clock in the morning, an hour after day. But we're usually not sitting them at daybreak because we're a long ways off the food source. We're waiting for them to come back to us in those bedding areas. So we're not sitting for a long time. And we're certainly not sitting all day in one stand. It's very important because the further it gets closer to dark, the less likely we are to see deer in that same spot because we're hunting bedding the deer moving towards food. So I want to get out of that stand and go to a food focused stand and sit about 3.5 hours for that afternoon. Unlike during the peak rut, I might sit in a morning stand till 1 o'clock and I'll go directly to an afternoon stand, maybe an area between bedding and feeding, closer to feeding, not on the food source necessarily because I don't want to be at the bottom of the funnel. I want to be on one of those legs. I think a buck might be moving towards that bottom of the funnel, which is the food source where they're getting in, they're going to stay till dark. I want to be on one of those legs, one of those outside movements, water hole, something on the way there, mock scrape combination. But I'll be in that spot in the afternoon with a high potential of seeing a nice buck, just like I was in the morning. So if you score the day, I'm getting a 10 out of 10 sit in the morning, a 10 out of 10 sit in the afternoon. And if you're sitting in the same stand all day, you're getting a 10 out of 10 in the morning and you're getting a 0 out of 10. That's if you pick the best stand in the morning, meaning an appropriate bedding area, pre-rut stand or rutting stand, and you're getting 0 to score the day in the afternoon. So you wasted half your day just not by not managing your sits and where you should be sitting. So again, sitting for a few hours and then getting out and finding an afternoon evening stand. No bucks? Why is that? You get to that time of year, it's the same time every year they're moving. Someone around here, if they're not seeing bucks or movement or trail cam pictures on October 25th, it's because they probably don't have any older bucks in the area because those older bucks are going to exhibit a lot of sign and movement. They're the ones that are ready. You know, an older buck might make 300, 400 rubs. A younger buck might make 5, 6, 10. It's exponentially greater as a buck ages through 5, 6, 7 years old. Leaves so much more sign, scrapes, rubs, everything. So if you're not seeing that movement at that time, don't look at it like the rut hasn't started. Look at it like, I don't have any older bucks. You either have to find them, go somewhere else, or wait for them to come during the peak rut, which is what a lot of people do, because very few properties, I call them the 5% club, actually have older bucks on them the majority of the season or attract older bucks. They have to wait for the rut. I don't want you to be a rut-only property, which is why we have so many strategies geared towards either finding better ways to hunt on public land or building better hunts on private land. Either way, you can do that. But rest assured, if you're not seeing bucks during pre-rut, someone else is probably within a mile, because someone else is taking advantage of that, like I hope you do and like we try to do, so that you can actually enjoy a pre-rut. Because pre-rut, you know, I know people that don't go out till November 5th, you know, in a pre-rut spot that starts October 20th, October 25th. And if they're waiting, they just missed 10 days to 2 weeks of the rut. You know, some of the best hunting. And if they don't see me on their property until then, boy, there's some real holes in the property, because if they're not there during the pre-rut, that means they're likely not there during the October lull. They might have been around for opening day or two until they're spooked off, but they're probably not coming back for the late season food sources either, because those late season food sources are the same things that they're keying on in October, during the October lull, if you have them too. So if you have to wait till the rut, that's not a good thing. Now, if I'm hunting public land, I'm specifically looking for those locations that might still have some rutting activity, where they'll get those long range cruisers. You might go into a stand in the morning and you might be in a nice funnel area and you shoot a buck at 11 o'clock in late morning that was somewhere else, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles away when you walked in the morning. It's a little bit different animal hunting public land. Bottom line is, that's what explains why someone else, and that's why I don't like rut watches, things like that. I don't really want a lot of feedback from the public, you know, the rut's happening here or there. I like that in combination, but if you take it 1 or 2 or 3 on face value, then it's not, you know, I need to know, do you have good food sources? Do you have good habitat? Are those deer there during the October lull? You know, you need to know those things. Are those bucks around? Are they core bucks, meaning they're around and in your property all the time? So there's a few more questions that go along with that, but that's what explains why one neighbor is seeing bucks and someone isn't. So hope that makes sense. The pre-rut is an incredible opportunity to go into a morning stand that hasn't been used for the entire year on an unsuspecting giant old monarch that's none the wiser, because he's starting to move during daylight. You might even shoot him at 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning, maybe right before a food source in the evening, but bottom line is he's moving a lot more during the morning hours. Great time to get out there. My favorite time of the year. It's here. It's a little sad because it's just going by. But, and hey, make sure you check out Dylan and I's podcast that we have coming out, whether we're going to call it Dylan and Jeff or Jeff and Dylan Talk Deer, Deer Talk, whatever we call it, but you'll see something along those lines coming out very soon. We're actually going to record the first one, Dylan, right now.
Got one more to do.
Oh, we got one more to do.
One more.
Jeez, Dylan's a taskmaster, I'll tell you what. I mean,
somebody's got to keep you in line.
Geez, the fun's got to start, though. We got to do this. I know it's getting closer to 1:30. We just talked about we want to be sitting by 4. It's getting dark, shooting light by 5 after 7. So we have a date with a tree stand or a blind coming soon this afternoon, but we're going to get a little bit more work done and then head out there. So we appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. And always, you know, I talk about HuntCast and HuntWise and HuntCast. That's something I helped create, the algorithm for HuntCast, the layering and when to hunt, and the whole strategy of the RutCast. But you can check that out. The link is always in the description for signing up for that. And when you click on that, I think it's 20% off you get when you look at that through my link that I have in the description. So please check that out. That's a great tool, mapping, wind mapping, which is really cool. It shows your wind blowing from the stand location where it's going. But a lot of great features to that, and I hope you like it. I hope you check it out. Those guys want to be the best, and they do everything they can to be the best. And so anyways, appreciate you guys watching the video, checking that out, and maybe checking out our podcast soon too if you're into that kind of thing. Thank you. I urge everyone out there to really check out my web classes. They've been wildly successful. We have one that details how you should design your land, another one that details how you should plant and maintain and manage a food plot program. How can you make those decisions that fit your land specifically and not someone else's? Unfortunately, there's so much information in the hunting industry that says you should do this, but it doesn't apply to you. These web classes directly apply to you. And then we have our third web class that came out last year, Rut web class, navigating the entire rut. And then we have our fourth one coming out, which is hunting hills and thermals. I urge you to check those out. Try the web classes, and they're all about teaching, helping you understand how you can navigate not only managing your property, food plots, and the rut, but also hunting strategically, hills, thermals, and wherever you pursue whitetails for your dream and your passion.